The Power of True Love Part 2. As Emeka and Ifeoma stood in the heart of the mansion, their future uncertain, the weight of the past hung heavily in the air. The tense silence seemed endless. Emeka, standing tall but unsure, looked at Ifeoma, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and worry. He had come this far, but was this truly the moment of reconciliation he had dreamed of? The silence was finally broken by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. It was Chief Okonkwo, his expression stern, his eyes as cold as the marble floors beneath them. Behind him, Lady Uche appeared, her gaze softer but still laced with disbelief. They both regarded Emeka with a complex mixture of disappointment, anger, and something deeper, something that resembled regret. "Emeka, why have you come back here?" Chief Okonkwo's voice was hard, yet there was a subtle tremor in it. Perhaps he wasn't as confident as he had once seemed. Emeka took a deep breath. "Papa, Mama, I've come to ask for your forgiveness," he said quietly. "I know I've made mistakes, but I can't keep living in bitterness. I love Ifeoma, and I want to build a future with her, one that is honest and true." Lady Uche's eyes softened, though her mouth remained tightly shut. She looked between Emeka and Ifeoma, who stood quietly by his side, her hands clasped in front of her. The tension between the families was palpable, the years of estrangement thick in the air. "You think you've come to ask for forgiveness?" Chief Okonkwo scoffed, his voice rising slightly. "You've dishonored us, Emeka. You've rejected your birthright for a woman who has nothing to offer you but trouble. You are my only son, and you throw it all away for this girl." Ifeoma's face remained calm, but her eyes burned with the quiet strength of someone who had endured far worse than words. She stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "I may not have wealth or status, but I have something far more important: loyalty, love, and a heart full of respect for Emeka. I did not steal him from you. I love him because he is the man who chose to stand by me, no matter what." Chief Okonkwo looked at Ifeoma as though seeing her for the first time, his gaze hard but not without a hint of recognition. He could not deny that this was the woman who had never once wavered in her commitment to his son. Still, he was too proud, too stubborn to admit that his son's choices had awakened something in him that he wasn't ready to face. "Enough," Chief Okonkwo finally muttered, turning away. "You've made your choices. We have nothing more to say." The room fell silent again, this time with the heavy finality of a door slamming shut. Emeka and Ifeoma exchanged a look, the pain of the encounter lingering in their hearts. But Emeka's resolve remained firm. He had stood up for his love, and no matter what his father said, he knew he had done the right thing. As they turned to leave, Emeka's mind raced. He had expected anger, but not this cold dismissal. What would it take for his family to see him as more than a pawn in their game of status and power? What could possibly break the wall his father had built around his heart? Days turned into weeks, and life for Emeka and Ifeoma carried on. They continued to build their modest life together, taking each challenge as it came. Yet, Emeka knew that something had shifted within him during that visit. The door had not closed forever, not in his heart. He wasn't ready to give up on his family, he just didn't know how to bridge the gap between them. One evening, as they sat in their small apartment, Emeka stared out the window, deep in thought. Ifeoma, sitting beside him, reached out and gently squeezed his hand. "We'll be okay, Emeka. We always are," she said softly. He smiled faintly, grateful for her unwavering support. "I know, Ifeoma. But I need to make things right with my family. I just don't know how." Ifeoma leaned in closer, her voice steady. "Love isn't always easy, Emeka. Sometimes, it takes time. But don't lose yourself in the process. You are already enough for me." Her words, though simple, filled him with a sense of peace he hadn't realized he needed. Maybe reconciliation would come in its own time. Maybe he had already found everything he needed in Ifeoma. But then, one fateful phone call would change everything. The call came in the middle of the night. Emeka's phone rang incessantly, its harsh sound cutting through the quiet apartment. He groggily picked it up, his heart racing as he saw the caller ID. It was his father. Emeka. Chief Okonkwo's voice was ragged, almost strained. "You need to come to the house. Your mother, she's fallen ill." In an instant, everything in Emeka's world shifted. His father, who had always been so strong, so unyielding, was calling him. In his voice was a vulnerability Emeka had never known existed. Without a word, Emeka grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door. Ifeoma followed silently behind him, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and worry. She could see the conflict in Emeka's eyes. This was a moment that could change everything. When they arrived at the mansion, Emeka was ushered in immediately. His father was waiting in the living room, his face pale and drawn. Lady Uche lay in the next room, unconscious. "She's been ill for weeks, Emeka," Chief Okonkwo confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want to burden you with it, but now I don't know what to do." Emeka stood frozen in the doorway, his heart pounding in his chest. His father, the pillar of their family, was vulnerable. And in that moment, Emeka saw the man his father truly was, not just a figure of power, but a person who had fears, regrets, and, perhaps, a need for reconciliation. "I'm here, Papa," Emeka said softly, his voice breaking through the silence. "I'm here for you." Ifeoma's presence was like a quiet assurance behind him. She had always known that beneath the tough exterior, Chief Okonkwo had a heart that needed healing. Emeka stood beside his father, watching over the woman who had been the center of their family's world for so long. Chief Okonkwo paced the room, his hands wringing together in helplessness. His eyes, once sharp and filled with command, were now weary and filled with doubt. "Why didn't you tell me, Papa?" Emeka asked softly, his voice trembling with the weight of everything unspoken. Chief Okonkwo's gaze shifted to him, and for the first time in years, Emeka saw the vulnerability in his eyes. I thought I could handle it. But I've been so caught up in my own pride, Emeka. I didn't want to admit that I needed help. And now, I might lose her." The man who had once seemed invincible now seemed so fragile. Emeka stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on his father's shoulder. "We're here, Papa. You don't have to go through this alone." And immediately Lady Uche was taken to the hospital for proper medical care. Lady Uju's condition remained critical, but the doctors had assured the family that they were doing all they could. It was a waiting game now, waiting for a miracle. Emeka stayed by his father's side, his resolve to mend the rift between them stronger than ever. He had once been forced to choose between his love for Ifeoma and his family's expectations, but now he saw that family was more than just wealth and status. It was about love, support, and the ties that bound them together, despite everything that had happened. Ifeoma sat quietly on the sofa, her eyes filled with concern. She had been a steady presence throughout the night, offering comfort to both Emeka and his father, even though she, too, was anxious. She knew the depth of Emeka's heart, and she also understood how much this moment meant to him. It was not just about Lady Uju's health, it was about healing the wounds of a broken family. As the night wore on, Emeka found himself lost in thought, the distant sounds of the hospital machines humming around him. His mind wandered back to the days when he had first fallen in love with Ifeoma. He had been young, ambitious, and eager to prove himself to his family. But now, looking at his father, he realized that love wasn't about proving anything. It was about being there for one another in the hardest of times. It was hours before Chief Okonkwo spoke again. His voice was hoarse, as if the weight of his emotions had finally broken through his usual composure. "Emeka, I've been wrong. I've spent so much of my life chasing power and wealth. I've treated you like a tool, a means to an end. But you've taught me something I've forgotten. Family. Love. That's all that really matters." Emeka's heart tightened. It was a confession he had longed to hear but had never expected to come. His father, the man who had always been distant and demanding, was finally admitting his mistakes. It was more than Emeka could have hoped for, and yet, he was unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry, Papa. I never wanted to hurt you," Emeka whispered. "I just wanted to live my life. The way I felt was right for me." The older man nodded, his shoulders sagging as if a heavy burden had been lifted. "I know. And now, I understand. You're not just my son, you're your own man. And I've been blind to that." Ifeoma's eyes welled with tears as she watched the two men, the emotional wall between them finally crumbling. She had always believed in Emeka's strength, and seeing this moment of reconciliation filled her with hope for their future. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, prayers, and moments of quiet reflection. Lady Uju's condition improved slowly, and though the doctors were cautious, they were optimistic. Emeka and his father spent more time together, mending their broken relationship, while Ifeoma stayed by their side, her presence a steady comfort. Finally, after a long week, Lady Uju was able to sit up and speak again. The moment was a miracle, and Emeka felt a rush of gratitude fill his heart. But more than anything, he was grateful for the healing that had taken place within his family. One afternoon, as they gathered in the living room of the Okonkwo mansion, Lady Uju looked at Emeka and Ifeoma with a soft smile. "I may not have been the best mother to you, Emeka," she said quietly, "but I see now how much love you both have for each other. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man you've become." Emeka's eyes filled with tears, the weight of her words finally breaking through the walls he had built around his heart. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered. "Thank you for everything." Chief Okonkwo stood beside his wife, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "And I, too, am proud of you, Emeka. You've taught me what truly matters. Family, love, and the courage to choose what's right for you." Emeka smiled, feeling the warmth of their acceptance. For the first time in years, he felt like he had finally come home. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and trials. But Emeka knew, with Ifeoma by his side, and his family's support, they could face anything. As the days passed, Emeka and Ifeoma continued to build their life together, one step at a time. They moved forward, not just as lovers, but as a family. And in time, they would prove to everyone that love, loyalty, and forgiveness could heal even the deepest of wounds. Years later, Emeka and Ifeoma stood hand in hand in the Okonkwo mansion, now a symbol of unity and love. They had built a life together, one that was not defined by wealth or status, but by the strength of their bond. Chief Okonkwo had retired, his once dominant presence in the business world now replaced by a more peaceful life. Lady Uju, though still recovering from her illness, had grown stronger, her relationship with Emeka now filled with warmth and affection. The mansion, once a place of tension and coldness, had been transformed into a home. And it was there, in the heart of that home, that Emeka realized something important. Love was not always about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up every single day for the ones you cared about. And in that moment, as he looked at Ifeoma and their children, Emeka knew he had found everything he needed: love, forgiveness, and a family that would always stand by him, no matter what. His journey had not been easy, but it had led him to the greatest treasure of all, the people who truly mattered.
Like and subscribe.
Thank you for watching. Tell us your opinion in the comments section.